So, welcome to Wealth Revolution, the podcast where we break free from the old financial system and explore the new economy, conscious wealth, and personal freedom. I'm your host, Luke Halford, and today we have a special guest joining us. Our guest today is Leisa Peterson. Leisa is a money coach and sudden wealth specialist. She helps entrepreneurs revolutionize their relationship with money, and she founded WealthClinic to address what the industry is really missing, which is the behavioural and mindset aspects of wealth building. She's the author of two books, The Mindful Millionaire and The Money Catalyst. And for me, this episode really ties into many of the subjects that I'm excited to cover on this. So I'm really excited for this one. I feel like there's a lot of alignment in my thoughts and Lisa's as well. So yeah, let's bring her into the room and get started. So yeah, you're in. Barry, I'm still getting used to this new system. I've got lots of buttons to hit and I'm trying to do it all myself, but it's working. We've got it working. How are you today? Thanks for coming on.
I'm very happy. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So yeah, we'll dive straight into it. So yeah, I'll put a slide up, you won't see this bit, but there's the truth about the current system is one of the subjects I like to get into first, because for me, I feel like the current financial system is kind of broken. The money printing's out of control. The inflation rates, in my opinion, are much worse than the governments are kind of letting on. It's kind of, twisted in a way that they don't show the true numbers. I feel that probably like 0.1% of these old money billionaires are running a system that benefits them to get richer and richer, and it's getting harder and harder for new leaders to thrive and grow. And what these old money leaders push is more control, and for me it's like an old money consciousness, and that old money consciousness is about creating fear and having power over people. I think it's time for change, and we are starting to see that, there's a new money consciousness or a new way of thinking about wealth. And for me, what's your take on the current state of the financial system? I know you've spent time in the traditional system and you've kind of evolved a new way of thinking as well, so what's your kind of take on it?
Yeah, I've been working with people and money in the United States and also internationally for over 30 years now. I have an MBA in finance. I'm a certified financial planner in the United States. I don't manage people's money anymore. I did that up until about 12 years ago. But 150% what you're saying, that fiat currencies are out of control. I think that our governments, particularly in the US, which I have done a lot of research about, have really lost their way. In the United States, we had this reserve currency that other countries sort of used and benchmarked off of, and we took advantage of it to the nth degree. And that's caused a whole mess of other problems because we were able to sort of spend like nobody's, like they say, dance like nobody's watching, spend like nobody's watching, and manipulate, and then not have to pay the price for the actions that our government and our people have gotten involved in. And I think that a lot of our problems stem from a belief and a misuse of debt, as like debt being the saving grace, which debt is a helpful tool. But when it becomes the whole entire foundation for an economy, then I would say that's one of the easiest ways to notify us that we've fallen off the rails. And so it's really scary. It's hard to be so deeply tied to the US dollar during these times, because it's kind of like watching a slow motion car wreck. Like we're in the car, we can see that it's going to implode at some point in the future, probably in our lifetime. And yet most of us are powerless to make changes at the fundamental systemic level. So I think what you and I both share in common is, okay, then what else? Like, what can I do to take care of myself and my family? Because if I can't make the changes, I'm not going to become the president of the United States. I'm not going to like go do all of these like infrastructure changes, because it isn't up to one person, even if we wanted it to be. So now it's okay, well, what can I do for myself? I feel like that's where we're at.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, so what was the key drive that inspired you to switch towards sort of the wealth coaching and I guess in particular mindset I guess it was a big change from in the traditional system managing people's money and then
Yeah,
switching over to that.
totally. I think that there's two things that are coming up. So I made the change and left my financial advising practice in 2014. Unfortunately, I was at an event that happens far too often in the United States, but I was at my doctor's office. A man walked into the doctor's office. He pulled out a very large gun and went on a shooting rampage while I was there. And I did not die, but my doctor, who I was minutes from being with, was shot and killed. In several other people were shot. And so, in the course of being in that situation, I had an out of body experience. The fear sort of took over and showed me that I knew that I was needing to make some changes in my life. And so I kind of had a conversation in the moment with God, like, if I live through this, I am going to walk away because I am here for a much bigger purpose than just helping people figure out how to invest their, life savings. That wasn't really what I was here for. So I also want to mention that for some reason it's just coming into like this conversation. But in 1991, I was getting my MBA, and I will never forget the class that we had where the finance professor, started diving into the US going off of the gold standard in the early 70s. And I remember that day as like this pivotal moment where I saw, like, I kind of had this flash that we were really screwed around money because of this decision, and that it would be many years out, but that it was going to change all of our lives forever, some point in my lifetime. And I went home that day and I actually like cried for hours because I was so sad that humans were so stupid that they couldn't even prevent this catastrophe from happening one day. And so I go and I start working for a big bank. I work up the corporate ladder. I had a very big job in a major bank as a vice president with tons of responsibility. And I ended up walking away from that after 9/11. I was actually had a meeting in the World Trade Center on 9/11 that got canceled at the last minute. And I lived on the West Coast. So it wasn't a normal thing for me to have been there. So it was these bookends, but I left the corporate world. I went into mortgage, and then I became a financial advisor. But I think that when it came to that shooting and being there in that moment, it was like I sensed that I knew a lot more than most people do about money, and that it was my job to actually start to educate people, not just about the practical aspects of money, but the mindset of why we live in scarcity and why people find themselves doing what they're told to do rather than questioning assumptions and living the life that they're really here to do, all because of their relationship with money. So that was a long answer to your question, but I hope that helps you and others understand where I'm coming from.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I remember reading about that in your book as well. Yeah, it was a great book, um, Mindful Millionaire. I always got twisted then. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So many insights in that. But yeah, I like the bit what you're talking about with the coming off the gold standard, because being in crypto, and for me, I did study all that, and it was new to me. Understanding, I had to go back to understand crypto and invest in it. I had to go back and find out, everything about money. And I was fascinated by how all fiat currency just meaning that any money that's got an infinite supply always fails. And you can take this right back to the Roman times when they watered down silver, and it's fascinating to me that it goes back that far, and why we made the same mistake again.
Yes.
If every country did it as well. Everybody followed. It's not like everything's fiat currency now. Nothing's backed by anything. So yeah, I think that was a key mistake, and I guess you must have intuitively known at the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it is a key thing that we need to change. So I guess, you've probably, I don't know if we've answered this question, but if you could redesign the financial system from scratch with a conscious wealth principles around it, what do you think would be the foundation to that now?
That's a big question.
Isn't it?
I'll just maybe like focus on the values piece of it. I think that I'm going to come at any solutions from a core value of mine, which is that we're all born on this planet. Some of us may have an idea of why and what the point of this all is, but like the idea that there is more than enough to go around to take care of everybody is something that's very important to me. I think having come from very little in this life and then been able to, by my early 50s, maybe even sooner, had enough money to potentially like walk away from work and just live off of like my investments. I have a very different perspective because I've seen sort of this spectrum. And I also have friends who are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and I spend time with them and I experience like what life is like for them. And so having seen that full spectrum, I can stand before you and everyone else and say, there is no reason why whatever we create does not take into consideration that just being born is enough to like the idea that we all start in completely different places and that there's no recognition of the power of like education. Like education has a lot to do with where people end up in life. And the idea that like in the US, we have a very biased system of education. So we have, 25% of people are illiterate. A lot of that has to do with like the taxes that are paid in their community are what fuel their education system. So it's all built to keep the poor people in systems of poverty without much in the way of like helping them out of that. And so I would look at financial currency from a place of like, how do we make sure that we don't have three or four individuals controlling over 50% of the wealth in the country and calling that a good thing for everyone? Like that's the sort of problems and questions I would want to explore, because we've proven as human beings that many times with money, when it comes to money, we act like rats, collecting as much as possible and thinking that that's a good thing. And that is like psychotic in my mind. It makes absolutely no sense. And yet here we are. So, yeah,
Yeah,
I didn't really
yeah,
answer your
good insight.
question, but I hope that gives like the spirit of how I'd be coming at it from.
Yeah, it's just getting the conversation going, isn't it? Because I don't think anybody knows the answer, but I think there's got to be a different way. And I think you're right. I think you just start with community. It's people really, because what is money? It don't really exist. What really exists is the goods and services. That's what we're after, and the feelings those things give us. So it starts about the feelings of people and how they communicate together. It's a form of communication and exchange of energy. So it's got to start with community, I think, isn't it? I think that's where it starts.
I'm glad you said that because I just want to say that community, the culture of community, is not something that we're really good at in Western countries. We really lost a lot of that. And money is just a reflection of that lack of community. And yet, when we're taking our last breaths, right, we're dying in this life, we are going to be thinking about family, friends, community. Did I make a difference? Like, for those of us who are like honest, hardworking people who care about others, we're going to be thinking about those things. We're not going to be thinking about, or I hope we're not thinking about like, this is how much I have in my bank account. Like, you can't take it with you. The feelings of love and compassion and empathy are going to be the things that you're going to die with. And I don't want to be thinking about those things. I want to think about community. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, thanks for your answers. And yeah, shifting gear onto the second topic, which is, for me, it's the new economy and the future of money. And we've touched on that a little bit anyway, but the questions around that is, for me, I kind of believe we are going for a form of revolution, revolution at the minute. It's kind of, there's new tools coming out. We've got digital currencies, AI-driven investing. The financial landscape itself is kind of evolving fast, and I think there is a lot of new opportunities coming up. And what new opportunities do you see emerging in today's economy that entrepreneurs can leverage for wealth creation, I guess?
I think that in the United States, what inspires me a lot is when business owners are looking at their corporations not just as a way of extracting resources, but about like impact, making a difference, and not just in the lives of their customers, but also in the lives of their employees. And so paying more attention to how does money flow through businesses are a huge part of our economy. So if like businesses get it right, then that has a ripple effect in every area of the economy. And so I feel like business owners are the leaders here, and the more business owners pay attention to how they can not just extract money but actually make a difference, that's where I see the biggest strides happening in people's lives, at least, like um, in the people that love the work that they do because they work for a company that like really cares about them and really cares about the employees and cares about and the environment. Like that's what's inspiring me out there in what I see.
Yeah, I have to agree. It's more about, I mean, the whole point of a business is profit, but some of the companies, and especially the huge ones like the pharmaceutical companies, for example, are just so profit driven that there's no values, or they don't care, about some of the damage they're doing. And I think, yeah, more of that is definitely needed, isn't it, in the world?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So next question, let's have a look what we've got here. So I've got, how do you help clients balance risk and opportunity when navigating emerging markets like crypto? As you know, it's another area that I'm heavily into, and I don't know if you've explored like AI-driven investing is a new kind of area that's evolving as well, and tech startups. These are all kind of high risk, but I guess high reward industries.
The question is like, how am I looking at investing, or what are some of the
Yeah, or for
strategies?
clients, I don't know if you help clients invest now. Is it all mindset, or do you help them do any of the practical sides of that? Or
What I focus on more than anything is education. So I do like to educate people about kind of where we're at, what's going on. I write in Substack a lot about the state of money and like helping people to understand more about it. But when it comes to direct investing, a year ago, I decided to get off the like buy and hold system that I had been taught forever in various forms, whether that be the efficient frontier model or what have you, like all the things that you're sort of spoon fed when you go through a traditional financial education or something like the CFP. I got off that bandwagon and moved to a tactical asset allocation investing strategy, primarily because I feel like we're at the top of the market right now. And I am in my late 50s. I am relying a lot on my investments for my future. And the idea that we have a 40 or 50% drop in the markets that I am totally exposed to that could take 12 to 20 years to recover is unacceptable to me. And I felt that intuitively. And thankfully, I know someone who had a hedge fund and had created these models over the years. And there are probably 90 models that are used universally, like throughout the world, with tactical asset, with lots and lots of research. But what I like about the whole concept of like tactical assets is it's not predictive modeling, it's statistical modeling. So it's saying based on trends, you're still going to probably be exposed to a downturn, but you're going to get out of that downturn based on the trends that are tracking. So you're coming in and out of buying and selling. And the idea is that it may take you 2 or 3 years to recover rather than 12 to 20 years. I also have been investing in crypto, and that was what brought us together and made me curious about talking to you. And and that's been a fascinating journey that I started in 2020. Not as much as I wish I had dove into crypto back in 2020, but but I am fascinated by alternative ways to manage money and not going with the same old, same old. But what I will say is that for anyone listening who does do the traditional buy and hold, your worst enemy is all of the information that you've been given up to this moment in time, because changing your mind is almost impossible. And I think it's going to hurt people very badly if they don't change their mind.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've not heard of this. What was it? Tactical. What's
Asset
the name?
allocation.
Oh,
Yeah,
research.
TA. Yeah, TAA.
Yeah,
Yeah, I learned about it in school. I learned about it when I got my CFP, but I think it's what oftentimes hedge fund managers use. They use these models. They aren't
yeah.
necessarily publicly available for people to find.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll get into the next subject. So if we go into, well, this is my favourite area, the wealth consciousness. I feel like this is probably the most important area out of all the all the areas that we cover, because I think like you believe as well. For me, some of the biggest breakthroughs I've had in my life really has been deepening the understanding of how reality really works, and knowing that the inner world creates the outer world. And if I control my vibration, I can work on my vibration. This influences my thoughts, my feelings, and actions. I've gone deep on all this personal development and touched on spirituality, and I love all this stuff. But and from reading your book, I can see you've gone deep on this as well. And I guess you often talk about the emotional behaviour side of money. You speak like it's not beyond the spreadsheets. And what do you think the single biggest mindset shift that helps people unlock financial growth around, mindset and I guess any of those areas,
Yeah.
spirituality, mindset, yeah. Or is there a single one, or is it a combination? I guess it could be.
Yeah. I think there's a single thing that we can speak to, which is that your relationship with money is often tightly connected to your perceptions of enoughness. So, what does that mean? If you do not think that you have enough, you have a powerful way of drawing in, if you will, magnetizing not enoughness in every aspect of your life. Not enough opportunity at work, not enough money to live off of your savings, not enough money to create what you want. That is very, very important to notice, that if you're coming from what I just classify as a scarcity mindset, that you don't have enough, you're probably going to create more of that. On the flip side, if you start to make the transition of understanding that how you feel about yourself has a lot to do with how you feel about external resources. So if you feel like you are not enough, you're often going to feel like there isn't enough out there to support you in your journey of what you want. So I like to bring people home to starting to understand, what would that mean for you to feel like you're enough? What would it mean for you to not be trying to prove that you're worth it? Prove is still an external thing. The only person you need to prove that you're good enough is ultimately yourself. Because if you don't feel that, no matter how hard you try, and I think this has something to do with the billionaires or the trillionaires, I feel like they have something to prove, and that's why they can't just get enough, feel like they have enough, and actually use their money to make the world a better place. They just have to keep growing and growing, is because it's coming from a place of not enoughness. And that's a key distinction I just want to clarify. Just because you have a lot of money does not mean that you have figured out how to live the most joyous, thriving life you could possibly have. It is not about how much money you have. That is proven by the billionaires. I wouldn't want to switch places with them. Of course, their money might be fun. I'd love to give it away, but I wouldn't want to switch places with their mindset. Each of us have to figure out where we want to be. But I'm just going to say that if you want happiness, you want joy, you want personal satisfaction, your journey starts with how do you feel about yourself and what work can you do to change that for the better? Then your money will start to reflect that in magical ways that we couldn't even begin to explain, because like you started this conversation, we have no idea the power of the mind in creating the life that we live until we start witnessing it for ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, it's powerful. Yeah, I think I'd almost say wealth. That mindset is the true wealth. If you've got that, you're okay. You can't take. It's like I guess the next question kind of leads on is how does self-worth directly relate to your net worth? Because it's funny, we have this word, don't we, called net worth in finance, and even that's, I think you write about this in the book, and I believe this as well, it's kind of a funny way to express it. It's almost like saying how much money you got makes you worthy, and it's not like that at all, and yeah, I think it really limits it. So yeah, I totally agree. But
Yeah, the worthiness, like, are you worthy of receiving money? Because the more worthy you feel, the more your business actually changes. Even something back to, like, I was talking about companies and like CEOs making a decision that it's about not just extraction, but it's about impact. That is an abundant mindset. That is coming from someone who feels very worthy of receiving money and giving money, both.
yeah,
And oftentimes when I used to do mortgages, I would underwrite people for very large mortgages, multi-million dollar homes that they were buying, and they were getting 3, 4, 5 million dollars for those loans. And I would look at their tax returns. And the one thing that stuck out to me was that the people that were the happiest, that really put off that vibration of abundance, gave a ton of money back to their community. Like, I was shocked at how much money they were giving back on their taxes that was showing up. And I'll never forget that. I thought people who really have this world figured out understand the value of giving back just as much as receiving.
yeah, they're almost the same thing in my experience. What I've had, the more I tend to give, it's not always just money, but adding value, and the more you put out there, it kind of flows. It has to flow. The energy has to flow. I think, yeah, I had a mindset coach once, and she was saying to me, the minute you hand over a certain amount of money, and it wasn't expensive. I use a lot of coaches and mentors, and I've learned that some of these tickets prices can be really high, and at first there's a lot of anticipation of giving that much money. But I've noticed that when I do, especially if it's in alignment to what I believe in and it's going to help me, it flows back in very quickly. And there's a fear around it. You think, oh, am I really going to get the value? And then it just happens. It's yeah. So I think there is something in that, the energy of money flowing. It needs to flow. It's like the universe. Everything's flowing all the time. And I think, like you say, people who try and keep hold of the money, hold it tight, usually run into problems. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Let's get into the next questions. Let me have a look. I've just jotted a few down just to give me an idea. I just thought I'd let it flow, see how it goes. But for those on a spiritual path, and I think this one comes up a lot for people because spirituality is really powerful. I think it adds a lot of value to your life, especially if it's genuine spirituality and you connect well. I think there's sometimes people who find it hard to reconcile that with abundance, and they can feel like they can't coexist. Like, you can't have money, you've kind of got to be spiritually against it. I don't know if you've come across this kind of thing. What's your feelings on that? Have you come across that before?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Super common. A lot of women struggle with this, in that they feel like the more spiritual they become, the less important money seems to them. And so but they're like, I don't want to be broke. Like, that's not helping anybody. So there is a realization that that's not where they want to go. So they come to me and they ask a lot of questions, or they get curious about, like, what's happening here. And I think it has a lot to do with, like, healing the money wounds that we have from the past. Like, many of us maybe, I mean, I'm going to be very candid. Like sometimes people have grown up and there was a feeling of scarcity, and the way that showed up was they stole. Like they'd go to stores and shoplift, or they would steal from their parents, or maybe they were in work that felt like they were stealing from their customers. um, there can be other situations where people saw their parents behave in ways, maybe they gambled a lot, or maybe they were very greedy and they kind of had this greed sort of mentality. My point is that there can be a lot of shame wrapped up in our backstories with money that we may or may not even know are there, and we spend a lifetime trying to push them away and ignore them and act like we're fine. And yet when I started doing my money work, I realized that I had to spend time looking inside of these different experiences that had happened with me and money, and reach a place where I could forgive myself or I could forgive other people. Because as long as I held on to this anger and this grief and this regret and this shame, I wasn't able to break away from my patterns with scarcity. They go together. So that healing process, whether it be working with a therapist or working with like a money coach, or there's even financial therapists now. Recently had this lovely woman I read about in The Guardian, who's based in London, who works with like billionaires on helping them heal their money story. And she also works on a sort of service basis for like the poorest people who could never afford her services. So she works on the full spectrum of helping people across, financial wealth, uh, explore their money stories and heal these wounds because they cause so much suffering in our lives. So I lost track of the question, but I just feel like this is something that's very helpful for a lot of people to know about.
No, I think it was spot on. Yeah, it's there's so many blocks money wise, and I've done some of this work myself and come across these blocks. And for me, I remember growing up, and I grew up in quite a lot of poverty, and we didn't have a lot of money. And I remember my parents were almost like angry towards people that had both. Like, they was bad if they had money; they'd done something corrupt, and that it always felt like it was bad to have money, or if you got rich, it was a bad thing to do. Or I think there's lots of it. People have lots of these. Even the billionaires can have them to certain degrees, like you say, with the network, the self worth, and there's so much work there. Adds a lot of value. Yeah, it's no surprise as it's becoming more common for it to be these wealth coaches and therapists and things like that, because it's such powerful work and it can change your whole life. So yeah, we'll switch gears again and we'll go on to the next topic. But yeah, some great insights there. Thanks for your answers. So the next area I usually look at is what I call, because I'm developing these workshops in a way, is the financial freedom formula. And everybody's got different formulas on how they can make this work. But I believe that, when I first got into doing this in a way, a lot of the spiritual work and the visualization and manifestation, it become apparent that that stuff does work, but you can't make it work without actually taking some action. I always say, like, pray and move your feet. You have to have a visualization, but you have to take aligned action as well along the way. And some people get lost there, I think. And I remember reading your book. I don't know that much about it, but you've got a tool called the gap analysis that helps people identify, where they are now and where they can go. And I know you've got some tools for the practical side to it. I don't know if you want to share some thoughts on that.
Yeah, this is definitely helpful for people who are in positions of making more money, perhaps, than they've ever made before. So, this idea of sudden wealth, whether it be through a business, through an inheritance, through winning lottery, like you name it. Um, what I found is because money is so complicated, oftentimes we'll go to like a financial advisor to help us because we've got this sum of money. The problem is, having been a financial advisor, is that they are not comprehensive enough in the whole picture of what you need to be paying attention to. So they may identify some of the gaps that you're missing. But what I found, because of being a business owner for, 30 years, being the financial planner, being a someone who built wealth for myself, and and paying attention to like the full spectrum, whether it be the mindset gaps. So, like, you've got a scarcity mindset and you want to have a more abundant mindset, that would be a gap. And then we kind of measure, where is that gap? What, based on your behavior with money. Same thing goes with something like taxes in the US. I'm not an accountant, but what we see over and over again is there are, 10 or 20 different strategies around tax management that most people don't even think about or know about as a business owner. And the accountants don't always tell people about that. So that would be another area. Another area would be like the legal aspects. Don't want to be an attorney, but I've worked with enough attorneys to be like, hey, here's some questions about estate planning or structuring of your business that you may need to be making that new transition to, so that you can save in taxes, so that you can actually build wealth. And then, there's lots of other areas, but the other one that I think is super helpful to notice, if we have time, it's just a short story. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. We can go.
Sure.
If you're good, we
Okay.
can go for another 20 minutes. So is that good for you?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I can go, probably for another 10. So my daughter has a very successful company that's been growing over the past 4 years, and she's building wealth very quickly through her business ownership, because we have figured out all these strategies and made sure that she's putting all of them into practice as soon as she possibly can. But I noticed that one of the areas that causes her to build a lot more wealth than most people running businesses is in what she charges to her customers. And she's developed a strategy that I'm just blown away by, because I can't believe I never saw it in the past. But here's kind of the formula so everybody can copy it, right? That's the point. Is she works with brands because she's a content creator, and she negotiates deals with brands out there in the world, and they'll come in and they'll say, we'll pay you this for that service. And she has developed a system where she knows her value. She's very comfortable negotiating. And no matter what is offered, she will always counter with a much higher proposal than what's being offered, because she feels very confident that they could pay more for the value what she's been being created. What I've realized is the negotiation between what they start at, and oftentimes these deals are very lucrative. So most people would just accept the bottom. By the way, they would also hire an agent to do all of this for them, and they pay 20% off of the top, which she doesn't do because she's comfortable negotiating. So she'll ask for that higher amount and oftentimes get it, or at least be comfortable. She will not stop negotiating until she hears a no. And she purposely wants to hear that no. What I've realized is that her quickly building wealth isn't in all the regular deals she's getting. It's in the margin between the yes, I could just take what they offer me, and negotiating until she hears a no. That's where her wealth is being built. And most people don't operate that way.
No. Especially if it's a bigger company that you feel, like you want to get, they're offering a lot anyway. Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we'll finish off with the last section now. Yeah, because I know you say you've only got 10 more minutes, and this is, for me, it's the beyond the financial wealth. I like to call this section. So, well, beyond financial freedom, ideally, because I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, but this part's more about fulfillment and purpose. I see, like you, I do meet, being in crypto, people who have achieved financial freedom and things like that, and it just often creates a new set of problems. Even so, all the same problems show up. It doesn't solve everything. Some people feel before you reach financial freedom, it's going to solve all your problems, and it just doesn't. So once someone achieves financial freedom, how do they find a deeper fulfillment and purpose? Have you got any views on that, I guess? So I think we've touched on this a bit anyway, but yeah, we can recover it.
Yeah. We can definitely go deeper. What a awesome situation to be in the position where you know that you have financial freedom. I actually think that this can be a really big trap that many people fall into when they achieve that level of success and they've made it the goal. The question that we we're going to end up inevitably asking ourselves is like, what now? What's next? To me, that spaciousness that you've created in your life, one of the most satisfying things you can do, especially because you've made money such a priority in your life, is to go back and really understand your money story. Not just for a walk down memory lane, but for a fundamental understanding of where scarcity comes from for you. It's different for every single one of us. But the work that I do, some of the very special work that I do, and I only do this for a small number of people because most people aren't ready for having these kinds of honest conversations with themselves, is around finding what I'll say is the golden thread. And the golden thread is it kind of wraps through our lives and causes us to do things that we do that orient to our relationship with money. And if we don't understand what that is, we will make very different decisions about how we spend our time, how we find our purpose, how we engage in our relationships, because we're missing one of the most important pieces of our lives. That's me from my own experience. And so when people have the resources and the time and they're asking themselves this question, that is the best possible time to say, I actually want to get to the bottom of why financial freedom was so important to me in the first place. I want to get to the bottom of like where my scarcity thoughts come from, because without knowing that, it's really tough to rewrite your story from a place of abundance. Not everybody has this challenge, but those who this message is resonating with in this moment knows there's something that they don't understand. And there's a sense, an intuitive sense that if they got to the bottom of it, their life would be better. And that is the kind of work that to me has been the most profound. I've always been good with money. I've always had money. But until I got to the bottom of some of these stories, that was when my life became a completely different experience that leads me to even being on this conversation today and writing the books that I write.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I never really thought about it that way. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because it's a big responsibility. Financial freedom sounds exciting, but you need to steward it well, and without that knowledge and kind of understanding, like you say, your money story, you could easily sort of sabotage yourself if you're not careful. I mean, I've had situations where especially in the past, where I've got hold of a certain sum of money and wondered how it just disappeared so fast. It's almost like I sabotaged it, it was too much money. And I hear this a lot, people doing that, and I often come across people say they've done that and they don't really know how, but they kind of do, but it's kind of subconscious. I guess understanding your money story would really help with that, especially if you, as you said, you're coming into sudden wealth. If you come into sudden wealth, and crypto is an area where that happens to a lot of people. I've got a lot of clients that happens to, where they've got these big sums all of a sudden, they don't really know what to do. It almost scares them,
Yeah. It's really, really normal. And I went through it myself. And you don't have to be like, 10, 20, 30, $100 million to like have problems. Like it can be even just like $1 million, or for some people, $500,000. All of a sudden their whole world turns upside down and they don't understand what's going on, or that maybe they've made it and they've lost it. And then they're like, wait a minute, is that a pattern? Like, I want to understand this so that I can have more sustainable wealth in my future. Like, I think that's what we're all looking for. Ultimately, we don't want to have to worry about money. It can be a game, but like, especially if we have partners and they may be different than us, right? We may be in it for the game, but our partner's like, just put $1 million aside so that no matter what happens, like I've got that. And if we won't do that, then there's an opportunity for like something is going on under the surface. And if you get to the bottom of it, I promise you, you will see money in a different light, and you'll probably have more freedom and joy, the kind that you thought you were going to get by building wealth. It's not going to come from that. It's going to actually come from understanding yourself better and healing.
Yeah. That's not value in itself, but let's finish with one last question then. So how do you personally define true wealth? And has that definition evolved throughout your journey, I guess, is to follow on from that?
Yeah. It constantly is evolving. And in this moment, wealth to me is good health, sufficient resources to make decisions and choices that bring a great deal of happiness to myself, to my friends, to my community. Um, and I think it's really because of where I've come from. There is a lot of merit to like having assets in accounts that are just sort of like there for a rainy day. I enjoy that, and it gives me great satisfaction to know it's there. But more important than anything is health, loving relationships, communication that's like rock solid with the people that are most important to me, meaning like open, vulnerable, totally present relationships with those closest to me. Like that is what I define as wealth and success.
Brilliant. Thanks. Yeah, some great insights today. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing. Where can people find you if they want to get involved in the Wealth Clinic? I know you've got a website, and I will post them when I post the video. We'll post them all as links anyway. Um, but do you have a website or
Yeah.
Instagram, YouTube
Uh,
channel? I think you have all these.
mhm. Wealth
Yeah,
Clinic. Yeah. Wealthclinic.com/vision gets you like first chapters of both of my books and a meditation that dives into helping you explore your relationship with money. If you have questions, just want to pop them over to me, you can write to me at lpeterson@wealthclinic.com. I'm always happy to answer questions and just hear from everybody.
brilliant. Okay. Well, thanks for your time today, and we'll yeah, I'll talk to you again soon, and yeah, thanks again.
Thank you so much, Luke. This has been great.